This is a first simple application example of a for loop, summing up a known quantity of numbers. Here we know exactly how many times we'll go through the loop because a user is going to tell us that up front. Here is the pseudocode on the left for the code on the right. We're using our static utility class to prompt the user for the exact number of numbers they want summed. Then we use that input as our looping limit in our for loop. We loop from 1 to n by ones, and on each iteration we prompt the user for the next number, and we keep adding it to our running total, which we've initialized to 0 up here, until we're done. Once we are done with this closing statement, we simply print the count of numbers and their sum, and notice that because we want to use the total outside the loop, we make sure to declare it ahead of and outside the loop. Down at the bottom is some sample output. The user said they wanted to sum 3 numbers, so we execute our loop 3 times, prompt for the 3 numbers, and print their sum. Once again, same standard for looping pattern as before. To see this code executed, please pause this video and view the short code walkthrough video for looping for sum.java, found in the usual place. Open up this file in JGrasp so you can follow along, then come back to this video when you are finished. Using the debugger makes it very easy to see the flow of execution of any for loop, so I do suggest you watch. This next application example of a for loop demonstrates counting up with an increment greater than 1. Here we are simply printing all the even numbers from 0 to 30 in a horizontal row. Because we can deduce exactly how many values this will entail, we can use a for loop for this. So in our for loop, we are simply counting up from 0 to 30 using an increment of 2 so that we only print the even numbers. What we're doing inside the loop body is assembling a print string. We initialize its value to an empty string, as we see up here ahead of the loop, and then in each iteration of the loop, we simply append to that the current value of the index variable I together with one blank space. Once we are finished looping, we simply print out that one lengthy string, giving us the output we see down here. Alternately, we could have done the same thing using system.out.print on each iteration, leaving the cursor on the same line on each pass through, but I just elected to do it using repeated string concatenation. Either way works just fine. Once again, same standard for looping pattern as before. To see this code execute, please pause this video and view the short code walkthrough video for looping for evens.java, found in the usual place. Open up this file in JGrasp so you can follow along, then come back to this video when you are finished. This next application example of a for loop demonstrates using an index variable decrement to print a string backwards. Here, we are using JOption pane GUI pop-up dialogs to prompt the user for some text, which we will echo back to them, only reversed from end to end. Here again, we know exactly how many times we need to go through the for loop, because we know the length of the string the user has entered. In our loop initialization this time, instead of beginning at 1 or 0, now we begin at the index of the last character of the string, which we know from before is simply length minus 1. Then, instead of incrementing the loop index variable, we now decrement it by 1 each time, as long as the loop index remains greater than or equal to 0. So we begin this for loop with a 0 length backwards string, as shown up here, and on each iteration we add onto it one more character at the indicated index location, beginning at the last character and moving right to left. For example, characters 40, 39, 38, and so on down to character 0, the first character of the original string. After we're done, using a pop-up dialog, we simply print the original string and its mirror image on separate lines, as shown here. Once again, same standard for looping pattern. To watch this mirroring take place in the debugger and then live, please pause this video and view the short code walkthrough video for looping for backwards.java, found in the usual place. Open up this file in JGrasp so you can follow along, then come back to this video when you are finished. To follow up on the last example of string processing, here's an example of a very common gotcha when working with entire strings. Recall that the first character of any string is at index 0, and that the last character is always at the index 1 less than the length of the string, or at index length minus 1. So if we wanted to process a string character by character, This top example shows the correct for loop structure to do that. We would begin at index 0 and loop up to the last character, which is 1 less than the length of the string. What we don't want to do is in this bottom example in red, where we include the index equal to the length in the for looping. This will take us past the end of the string and result in some sort of exception error because there is no character at the index word.length. Again, this is a very common gotcha, so pay close attention to the proper loop boundary in this case. Similarly, for the case of backward string processing, here are a couple other gotcha examples. The right way to go from the right to the left in a string is shown in this first example. Our loop index I begins at the index position 1 less than the length of the string and decrements as long as the index remains 0 or greater. Inside the loop, we can do whatever we wish to the individual index characters of the string. What we don't want to do is either of these two examples. In this first one, this loop initialization is incorrect because there is no character at index word.length. That would be off the right end of the string. And similarly, this second one is fine in its initialization, but now its loop condition is incorrect because it will only loop down to index I equal 1 and miss the first character at index I equals 0. So again, this general pattern at the top in green is what you want. Finally, this last application example demonstrates using a for loop to display outputs at uniformly spaced intervals, as well as a few other things. What we're trying to do in this example is print out the temperatures from 50 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit and the corresponding temperatures in Celsius. We loop over this specified set of temperatures in this for loop, and notice that within the loop body we are calling this helper method down here to convert an input temperature in Fahrenheit to Celsius and return the result. This particular method may look quite familiar to you at this point. Once again, the statements of a for loop body constitute one block and may contain as many valid Java statements as desired, including method calls. Notice that up here we are parameterizing the endpoints and resolution of the for loop and using these variables as the values for our for loop parameters. Regardless of how we set or obtain these values, the bounds of the for looping are known before the loop begins. Whenever feasible, you should try and structure your code like this, carving out any variable parameters like this, because these are sort of like the dials or settings to your program, and they are grouped here in one place, making the program a bit more general and useful. The sample output for these boundary and spacing parameters is shown here at the bottom left. I won't belabor this example too much here because there are a number of details to it, but yet again, the same standard for looping pattern applies. To see this code executed, please finish up by viewing the short code walkthrough video for looping for interval output.java, found in the usual place. Open up this file in JGrasp so you can follow along. Using the debugger makes it very easy to see the flow of execution of any for loop, so I do suggest you watch. Okay, and with that, we'll wrap up this discussion of for loops and their application.